Nombre virus, the deadly Hantavirus that causes pulmonary syndrome, has been tracked by the CDC in roughly 850 confirmed cases across states since the disease was first identified in 1993. The cases are scattered across 36 states. Most are concentrated in the rural Southwest, particularly in the Four Corners region of New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah. A meaningful number have occurred in the rural Midwest and rural Pennsylvania, in the same general counties where the largest Old Order Amish settlements in North America are located. And in over 30 years of formal reporting, the CDC has yet to publish a single confirmed Nombre virus case from an Old Order Amish farmer in any of those counties. Zero. Not one. Lancaster County in Pennsylvania has roughly 45,000 Old Order Amish residents and 0 recorded hantavirus cases. Holmes County in Ohio has roughly 40,000 plain community members and 0 cases on record. LaGrange County in Indiana, the same story. These are populations that live in rural farmhouses, work outdoor barns and silos, store grain in volume, and have constant daily exposure to the exact deer mouse populations that carry Nombre virus through aerosol transmission of contaminated rodent droppings. Their epidemiological profile should look identical to their non-Amish neighbors 3 miles down the same road. It does not. There is a reason for that, and it is sitting in a notebook in a kitchen drawer in Sugarcreek, Ohio. I drove out to that kitchen last fall. The notebook belongs to a man named Daniel Hostetler, whose family has farmed the same 120 acres of Tuscarawas County land continuously since 1827. The relevant entries were written by his grandfather, Mose Hostetler, in pencil, starting in 1934, and the protocols documented across those pages have been applied without interruption by 4 generations of the family. The total annual cost of the materials needed to run the protocol on a working farm is roughly $4. Welcome back to Forgotten Home Science, where we dig up the engineering, the chemistry, and the practical knowledge the textbooks stopped teaching. Stay with me on this one, because the $4 method I am about to walk you through has not been in any mainstream American pest control manual since 1948, and it remains the single most effective rodent exclusion protocol I have personally observed in any rural setting. Let me set the scene before I walk you through the method, because the method makes more sense once you understand what kind of place actually uses. The Hostetler farm sits about 3 miles outside Sugarcreek, known as the Little Switzerland of Ohio, on a gravel road that turns to dirt for the last quarter mile. The main house is white clapboard over a stone foundation built in 1839. The barn is hand-cut timber frame raised in 1867, still standing on its original sills. Daniel and his wife Sarah live in the house with 3 of their grown children and 7 grandchildren. They have no grid electricity. They have no internet connection. They store roughly 6 tons of feed grain in galvanized metal bins inside a smaller granary attached to the barn. They have a working population of deer mice in the surrounding fields that is functionally identical to what every neighbor for 10 miles has on their property. What they do not have, and have never had in living memory across the entire extended family, is a hantavirus case, a major mouse infestation in any indoor structure, or a single year in which their stored grain was meaningfully damaged by rodents. None of the family members can recall their own parents or grandparents ever reporting a mouse problem of the kind most rural American households deal with as a matter of routine. Daniel walked me out behind the house on the second morning of my visit. The temperature was about 50 degrees, and the ground was still wet from overnight rain. He pointed at a narrow strip of pale gray material running along the entire foundation of the house, about 6 inches wide, set into the dirt right against the stone. The strip was barely visible. If you walked past it without knowing what you were looking at, you would assume it was a band of crushed limestone or weathered concrete. It was not. The strip was a perimeter dust of hydrated lime mixed with wood ash, applied fresh every spring after the last frost, and renewed every fall before the first hard freeze. That dust is what keeps the deer mice out of the house. Daniel pulled the notebook out of a kitchen drawer when we went back inside. The pages are yellow with age now, but the pencil entries are still legible. The earliest dated entry on the Lyme application protocol was written by his grandfather Mose on April 14, 1934. The entry reads, and I am paraphrasing the Pennsylvania Dutch English slightly for clarity. Lime ring renewed today, 2 parts hydrated to 1 part ash, foundation all around, 6 inches wide. Last year's mice gone by June, 2 cats fed this spring. That single sentence contains the entire core of a rodent exclusion protocol that has been keeping Mose Hostetler's descendants free of Hantavirus. For 92 years, the materials are hydrated lime, wood ash, and a working population of barn cats. The total annual cost in 2026 dollars is between $4 and $7, depending on how much lime you buy, and the wood ash is free if you heat any part of your home or shop with wood. Let me explain why it works. Because the chemistry is the part that should make you angry once you understand it. Hydrated lime is calcium hydroxide, written chemically as CaO2. The compound is what you get when you take limestone, heat it to roughly 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit in a kiln, and then add water to the resulting quicklime. The end product is a fine white powder that has a pH of around 12.4 when it gets wet. For comparison, household bleach has a pH of about 12.6. Battery acid has a pH of about 1. Pure water sits at 7. A pH of 12.4 is extremely alkaline, which is the chemistry term for the opposite of acidic, and it is alkaline enough to chemically burn most living tissue on direct contact. Wood ash is the residue left over when wood combustion happens at a high enough temperature to consume the organic carbon. What remains is a mix of mineral oxides, primarily potassium carbonate and calcium carbonate, with smaller amounts of magnesium and sodium compounds. When wood ash gets wet, the potassium carbonate reacts with the water to form potassium hydroxide, which is sometimes called lye. The pH of wet wood ash hits about 11 to 12, highly alkaline, highly caustic on contact with soft tissue. When a deer mouse tries to cross a 6-inch wide perimeter of lime and ash dust to reach the foundation of a house, 3 physical effects happen simultaneously. First, the dust adheres to the mouse's paws and fur, which the mouse will then try to clean off by grooming. The act of grooming pulls the caustic dust into the mouse's mouth and onto the sensitive skin, around the eyes and nose, where it causes immediate chemical irritation. Second, the alkalinity damages the keratin layer on the mouse's foot pads. After even a single crossing, the paws become painful enough that the mouse will avoid the area for several days. Third, the dust dries out the protective oils in the mouse's fur, which interferes with the mouse's ability to regulate body temperature in the cool. Overnight hours, when it is most active, the mouse does not die from the encounter. It just learns within 1 or 2 attempts that the perimeter of the building is a place that hurts. Mice are intelligent enough to remember pain associated with a specific location for the rest of their lives, and they will avoid that location and teach their offspring to avoid it. A properly maintained lime line creates a behavioral barrier that the local mouse population learns to respect within a single generation. If you are still watching, you are now part of a very small group of Americans who have heard the chemistry behind a method that worked across rural America for over 2 centuries. Compare that to what the average non-Amish American household does to manage the same problem. The modern American consumer spends roughly $200 per year on residential pest control on average. That figure rises to $300 to $600 in regions with active rodent populations, depending on how aggressive the local pressure is. The pest control industry generated approximately $26 billion in residential revenue in 2024. Most of that revenue came from ongoing service contracts that require quarterly chemical applications of anticoagulant rodenticides like brodifacoum and diphacinone or bromethylene-based products. The chemicals work mostly. They also kill an estimated 10,000 to 12,000 American household pets per year through accidental ingestion. According to data from the Aspica Poison Control Center, they contaminate the food chain that supports owls, hawks, and bobcats, which is documented in dozens of peer-reviewed wildlife mortality studies. Total Amish household spending on rodent control, including the lime, the wood ash, the steel wool used for gap stuffing, and the food for the working cats, is somewhere between $50 and $100 per year. Zero chemical residue, zero secondary kills, zero hantavirus cases. How did a method this effective get pushed out of mainstream American pest control practice? The story has a name and a date attached to it. In 1933, an industry trade association called the National Pest Control Association was founded in New York. The association rebranded in 2000 to the National Pest Management Association, which is the name you may recognize from current industry literature. But the 1933 founding date is the relevant one. The association was created specifically to standardize chemical-based pest control protocols across the rapidly growing American extermination industry and to lobby for regulatory frameworks that would favor licensed chemical applicators over the traditional methods that rural Americans had been using on their own properties for generations. Between 1933 and 1948, the NPCA published a series of standardization documents that would become the foundation of nearly every commercial pest control training program in the United States. Those documents specifically excluded all of the traditional perimeter methods that did not require licensed chemical applications. Lime was not listed, wood ash was not listed, diatomaceous earth was mentioned only as a secondary supplemental tool. Steel wool gap stuffing was acknowledged but classified as a homeowner task rather than a professional service. Wallace Ashby, a cooperative extension service architect at the United States Department of Agriculture, had documented the lime perimeter method extensively in his work on farmhouse design through the 1920s. His writings on practical farmstead construction, including USDA Farmers, Bulletin 1132 from 1920, titled The Farmhouse, included specific recommendations for lime application around the building perimeter as a routine rodent exclusion measure. Ashby's work was widely distributed through the Extension Service network throughout the 1920s and 1930s. Then the industry standardization documents came out. The Cooperative Extension Service did not immediately stop teaching the traditional methods, but over the next 2 decades, the funding for extension publications was reallocated toward chemical pest control education. By 1955, the lime application protocol had been removed from active extension recommendations in most states. By 1968, it was no longer mentioned in any state-level pest control training curriculum that I have been able to locate in archive research. The EPA, established in 1970, would eventually regulate these chemical applications, but the industry standards were already entrenched. By 1985, an American homeowner asking a licensed pest control technician about lime perimeter dusting would have received either a blank stare or a polite explanation that the method was outdated. The Amish communities did not pay attention to any of this because their communities did not connect to the chemical pest control industry in the first place. They were not customers. They were not threats to anyone's revenue. They were simply ignored, which is the best possible outcome when an industry decides your traditional knowledge is commercially inconvenient. Here is how you apply the protocol on your own property. Today, using the exact same materials and dimensions that Mose Hostetler documented in 1934. You need one 50-pound bag of hydrated lime, which runs between $4 and $7 at any feed and farm supply store. You also need a 5-gallon bucket of clean dry wood ash, which is free if you heat with wood or have access to anyone who does. The ratio is 2 parts hydrated lime to 1 part wood ash. Mix the 2 materials together in the bucket with a stick or a small shovel. Walk the entire perimeter of every building on your property. Pour a band of the mixed dust along the foundation, starting right against the wall and extending outward 6 inches. The band should be about ½ an inch deep. Use a small garden hand trowel or a wooden paint stick to smooth the band and ensure consistent coverage. Pay particular attention to corners, to the area under any porches or decks, and to the foundation joints around utility penetrations like water lines and gas lines. Renew the band twice a year, once in the spring after the last hard frost has passed, and once in the fall before the first sustained freeze. In areas with heavy summer rainfall, you may need to refresh the band in late July as well, because the lime gradually washes into the surrounding soil with each significant rain event. Wear gloves when handling the dust. Hydrated lime is caustic enough to dry out your own skin if you get it on your hands, and the dust can irritate your lungs if you inhale it. A simple cotton dust mask handles the inhalation concern. Long sleeves and pants handle the skin contact concern. Keep children and pets out of the application area until the dust has settled and bonded to the moisture in the soil, which usually takes about 2 hours. The full annual cost of materials for the average American single-family home is between $4 and $7 for the lime, plus whatever you spend on a basic dust mask if you do not already own one. The labor is 1 to 2 hours twice a year. The protection lasts the entire active season for the local deer mouse population, every year, indefinitely. This is the protocol that has kept 4 generations of one Amish family Hantavirus free on a Tuscarawas County farm. The same protocol works on a suburban ranch house in Phoenix, a townhouse in Cleveland, and a cabin in Colorado. Mice are mice. The chemistry does not care where the foundation is located. Mose Hostetler died in 1971 at the age of 79. His son Eli maintained the protocol until 2003. His grandson Daniel runs it now, and Daniel's son Aaron has already started applying it on the additional 40 acres the family bought in 2019. The notebook is now in its 5th generation of continuous use. The pencil entries from 1934 still apply, because the chemistry of calcium hydroxide has not changed in the last 100 years, and the behavior of Peromyscus maniculatus, which is the scientific name for the North American deer mouse, has not changed either. Everything in this video is in the public domain. The chemistry is taught in any introductory inorganic chemistry course at any community college in the country. The methods were documented by the USTA between 1920 and 1948. The Amish communities that have continued to use the methods for 90+ years are a matter of public observation for anyone who has spent time in Lancaster, Holmes, or LaGrange counties. The only reason this knowledge is not in the hands of every American homeowner is that a $26 billion industry has spent the last 70 years quietly making sure the alternative stayed invisible. Every share of this video puts one more American household closer to the $4 version of the same protection. Send this to the person in your life who currently pays a quarterly pest control company several $100s a year and still finds mouse droppings in the garage every winter. They will thank you. And if you want the next video in this series to find you when it drops, the subscribe button quietly handles that in the background. Thank you for watching.